You ask my children, they'll probably think like I make a TikTok video and post it and then I go home. Honestly, the most surprising thing for me still is how terrible people are at communicating. The litmus test for me is if I can explain it in a way that my mum can understand. And I don't know why we have to use jargon.
I don't think people realize how much goes into tech. There's so many little clog wheels that turn together.
Currently, I'm at HashiCorp. I'm director of content.
The name of the podcast is Visible.
My initial reaction was, oh, visibility is about speaking the loudest, but it's really not.
So I'm always like struggling with that balance. Like, how do you not go me?
It's about them slowly, incrementally having the confidence to take baby steps to advocate for themselves.
You know, you see these perfect pictures and you feel that they're perfect, and that's a very hard thing to live up to. So.
No one's perfect. Nothing is perfect. We're all flawed people. Yeah. Everyone is. And if they're saying they're not, they're lying. Stop caring about what people think. Just living my life, being unapologetically me. I just need to be myself and not have to apologise about it.
What goes behind building great tech and bringing it to the world? It's the marketing, the product, the design, the engineering. But most importantly, it is the humans behind it. Welcome to The Visible, where we bring you the stories behind tech. The wins, the realizations, the mistakes, and the lessons. The stories that show you how great ideas really come to life. We bring you the stories behind tech so you can build, lead, and tell your story better. Welcome to another episode of the Visible podcast, and I've got a very dear friend, so I'm so excited for having you on the podcast. Jenny, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having
on
me.
The show.
This is amazing.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. But for people who don't know you, if you can just share a bit about, like, you know, a little bit about yourself, but also the journey that you've been in, how you got into tech. Just tell us about you, Jenny.
Okay. Oh, this is always a daunting question. Where do you start? I don't know. I think I've had a boring life, but I probably haven't. I've been in my career in marketing communications for about almost 20 years. And I didn't start in tech, but I actually wanted to be a police officer when I was little.
I can see
That's
that.
all I wanted to be. And then for some reason it never happened. But anyway, I digress. So I studied like sociology at university because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I thought that kind of kept my options open because I was quite interested in how society works and a bit of politics. And, you know, there was a lot of communications in there as well. And I always naturally leaned towards English and communications. That was always my strong point at school, even though I never thought about having a career in that, because I was like, I'm going to be a police officer and save the world and that will be it. But after university, I graduated and then I lived in Canada for a while because I thought I'm going to go see the world and travel, and because I'm dual nationality, I was able to go there and actually have my son. So I returned back to the UK in order to raise him. So I had to quite quickly fall into a career, and I didn't really know what to do. I knew I was good at communicating. I knew I was good at English. I really enjoyed having a flair for language. And I was quite creative as well, but never like an artist kind of way, more creative with language. I used to write poetry. So I found a job as a marketing assistant for an escalator company, actually. It sounds really like boring, but it was actually really interesting. You can really geek out about elevators. So that was the beginning of my career. And then because I was, you know, basically a single parent, I had to start being quite ambitious, and I actually realised after a couple of years that I loved working in communications, and it sort of like snowballed from there. When people say, oh, you just fall into a career, they're absolutely right. A lot of the time you do, unless you know exactly what you want to do. Like if you're going to be a doctor or something, then that's your career path. It's very like predictable. But yeah, for me, it was the whole stereotype of falling into a career. That's what happened. So for the last sort of 20 years, I've always worked in generalist marcom roles across sort of engineering and defence and sort of tech sector. So it's been quite an interesting career. I did try like a business to consumer role, but I realised that I didn't like that. I much prefer business to business. I find it really fascinating taking alien concepts to even to myself, learning about them and distilling that into something really simple that my mum and my kids can understand and my friends. So that's sort of what I built my career on. So currently I'm at HashiCorp, which is an IBM company. Been there 3 years. I'm director of content. I lead a team and we cover social media, video, all things editorial, blog. So really hands-on. I've got a great team, really enjoy it. And I love working in tech. It's fast-paced. It's always interesting. There's always new stuff to learn. Yeah, and I get to meet people like you. So what can I say? Is that enough? Does that give you a good potted history?
I think you said, every time you were saying something, I was like, oh, I want to ask more here, but I wanted you to like finish your story. I can totally see you as a police officer. And obviously, like communications would be still very relevant, I think, in that role.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting how you say, people fall into role because into any career as well. Because I often think about like what I do for a day job, and I'm like, I never thought I'd be doing this. Like it's just something I've fallen into. I came into cybersecurity and tech like 7 years ago, and it's just been such a wonderful world, but also like just to discover everything that goes behind it. And that was kind of like the motivation behind starting this, because I don't think people realize how much goes into tech. Like obviously people know like there's engineering, which I think people understand, and building the products, but I think through running the podcast I've like met people like you. Like there's so many little clog wheels that turn together, and I think that's my intention with the podcast, is just to highlight that so much goes into this. But you said you're a director of content at HashiCorp, which is now part of IBM. What does a director of content do, Jenny? And what do people actually think that you do, and what is it that you actually do?
You ask my children, they'll probably think like I make a TikTok video and post it, and then I go home and it's all fun. My mum probably wouldn't have any idea what I do, bless her, even though I try to explain. But generally what I do is bring lots of things together. Like you just mentioned about cogs, there's lots of things that happen in the background. All of these like communications are little cogs that are turning, and they're creating a bigger picture. And that's what making, I guess, something visible is about creating those connections in the background in order to bring a piece of content to life. But the impact is what happens before and after. So for example, if you're working on an event, yes, like the visible thing is your event booth where you can turn up and you can see the branding and the people, and like you can go and see a talk. But in order for it to get to that point, it's probably like a year's worth of work, and you have to start, the basics is project management, and that's what people think is dull, but it's actually quite fun doing that. And then it's about bringing all those threads together in order to weave something which is the end product. But it's difficult because it's navigating multiple teams and people, and as we all know, people are complicated beasts. So communications are with people and around people are also a key part of that.
Yeah, that's so true. And content, like, it's something that's so interesting because it's changed so much.
It has.
I think what we look at as content, and even like companies, like big corporate companies, the way they have to present themselves to the world, like that has changed a lot. Being in the role that you're in, and I know you said you've gone through like quite a bit of a journey in different things. Is there something that's happening right now that's happened over the years that's been really surprising for you, or something that you go, actually that's really exciting, or you're like, I can't believe this is something that's that we are doing right now?
Oh, well, honestly, the most surprising thing for me still is how terrible people are at communicating. And how people think they are actually very good at communicating. Because if people were good at communicating, we wouldn't be in a lot of messes we're in. And this is talking about the macro environment, like politically, globally, everything, as well as in work as well, in projects. There wouldn't be misunderstandings. There wouldn't be the need to do anything, because like people would get the message and that would be it. But people are terrible at communicating, and I hate to say it, but especially technical people, I have found in my experience, are probably the worst communicators, because I suppose their skills are so almost like niche, and the need to hyper focus is so required that they forget about how to distill that into something that other stakeholders would need to know. I guess they've got their heads down and they're so laser focused, but that never ceases to amaze me, how people don't understand that they have to communicate, or they go, oh, I've had so many like C-level stakeholders that have said, oh, let's just send an email out, that will be a communication. And it's like, well, no, you can't just send an email out and expect everyone to read the message, understand it and act on it.
Yeah.
We know this from our everyday lives. I think of you as a consumer. When you're going to purchase something, you don't just read an email and go, oh yeah, that's my decision made.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy that.
Yeah.
It's a journey, and that could take sometimes years.
Yeah.
But yet we still don't.
We
just don't understand that, and we still never learn that.
That's so true.
So that's why communications will always be in demand, and it's always necessary.
Absolutely. And it's also about hearing the messaging from someone that you can connect to as well. Like it's like, I mean, if you look at the influencer marketing and stuff, you know, like that, the reason why that whole thing has blown up so much is like you're actually hearing that from someone who could be your friend, and you know, you kind of go, yep. I mean, and if you want to translate that same thing into enterprise, the fundamentals still really haven't changed. You know, it's just about getting that messaging right there. The other thing that you said about like the technical people, it's really funny because like when I first came into cybersecurity, I did not know anything. Like I came from a finance background. Coming into it, I was like, I know like what cybersecurity was, but there was so much lingo and jargon and, you know, like all of that. And my co-founder, who's like also the host of the podcast, like he's obviously been in there for a very long time. So often he would say things and I'm like, you do realize like it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I said, it probably doesn't to our audience as well. And I think that was a really good thing for me to know, because I often was the voice of the audience. I'm like, you can't just assume that people who are consuming would know everything. And I'm always now a bit worried because now I've been doing it for 7 years. I feel like I've kind of lost that. And it's just, how do you make content like easy to translate, like technical content? Because that is something that is on my mind all the time. Like, you know, I want to make sure that we're not losing the end consumer, because sometimes when you're in it so deep and, you know, you work for a very large enterprise, how do you still make sure that, you know, you're communicating in a way that the end user understands, you know, all these millions of acronyms that we've got?
I feel I've said this so many times to people, but the litmus test for me is if I can explain it in a way that my mum can understand, or if I'm out with my friends who work in totally different industries to me and jobs, if they can understand what I'm talking about, then that's my job done.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the litmus test. And I don't know why we have to use jargon and why we have to make it so complicated. I always relate it to stuff that people are using in our everyday lives, because something like cloud infrastructure, which is the industry I work in, it's so relevant to what is happening in our everyday lives. I got an Uber to this studio. How is that run? That's run in the cloud. Yeah. And how are apps developed? It's run with all of these developers, and how can they scale that so that it's something which my mum can use and afford to use? And that's the communication, and that's how we can simply put it. It's just about relating it back into something that you use in your everyday life. I don't think it has to be any more complicated than that. Yeah. And it doesn't need fancy words or concepts or anything else. It's just really simple, everyday language.
Maybe it just makes us feel smarter than
I don't know how it got to this point. I really don't. But all this corporate jargon we live with and everything else, and it's like, actually, maybe just give it to a 5-year-old and say, how would you explain it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so very true. You know, and I think one thing you spoke about, the Uber thing, that's so interesting, because that is one thing I really love about tech, is that it touches every life. Like everything that we do, be it cloud or now, obviously I'm going to say AI.
Oh no, I was avoiding saying that because I didn't want to bring it up.
I'm going to like try and not make this about that. But yeah, it is just such something that touches everything. Like even like the studio, the mics, everything is technology, and I think that's what's the most fascinating thing. But how do we keep it simple so that, you know, everyone understands? Because at the end of the day, even the consumers or people that we're working with are everyday people, and not everyone, even if you're a tech person, you know, might not be in the right tech, you know, like, because there's so many different silos. You might be a cloud person, or you might be a developer, and so to make it, you know, easy to understand, like that is definitely a challenge. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because the name of the podcast is Visible, and I think one of the things I was hoping to get out of this podcast and the conversations is this whole thing that there's so much great work that happens in tech, internally, externally, and often like we don't really know all the little pieces that come together. You know, a director of content, or someone doing social media, or, you know, there's comms, there's so many different pieces. The word really resonates with me, and that's why I made that the name of the podcast. When I say visibility to you, or visible to you, what does that mean to you, Jenny?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot, because when I first heard it, my initial reaction was, oh, visibility is about speaking the loudest. But it's really not. It's actually a really complicated concept. and it has so many layers. And I think being invisible and visible has responsibility, no matter which way you look at it. So because being invisible can be manipulative, it can protect people, and it can also connect. And it's the same with visibility. I mean, if you look at, for example, Noam Chomsky's work on like the propaganda model and the mass media and the role of the mass media, the message is whoever owns the mass media owns the message, and you can manipulate people by shouting the loudest about that message and owning the media. But then that's on a macro level. But then on a micro level, if you're a company that is, if I'm managing a PR piece or a PR program, or even crisis communications, for example, knowing what to say and when. So using that visibility and invisibility will help to your advantage and tailor your communications. So it's quite a deep concept. Yeah. And I really liked the fact that you were raising it, because I think it's really important to talk about, and how visibility isn't just about shouting the loudest, and also how we can use that in our everyday leadership to lead with empathy as well, I think, because people don't always want to be visible.
That's right.
And people always have stuff happening which is invisible, and it's not good and it's not bad and it's not right and it's not wrong. I think we're too polarized. Anyway, that was my point, that it's was way more complicated, and there's shades of grey in between both of the extremes.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And you're right. It's so complex, because when I initially sort of started the concept, and as I've started having more and more conversations, it is something really deep, and it's about how do you want to be visible. It's not always about building a public brand for everyone. For some people, they maybe are not comfortable doing that as well, and that's okay. And not everyone has to have that branding. You could do it for your companies, but it's also about what do you do internally? Are you visible to your company, to your peers, to your family and friends? It's, as you said, it's a lot of different layers, and it's also about the chapter of the life that you're in. I don't think we can all be shouting the loudest all the time. But also you have to connect with something. Like for me personally, before this I had a full career, and I kind of made this transition where I started from scratch, and I've always been someone who's been a leader, and I've always mentored a lot of people. And coming into, I kind of had that imposter syndrome that I didn't want to use that word for the longest period, because I'm no, I'm someone who's had a long career, and I'm a confident person. So I'm no, I can't have imposter syndrome. But in reality, that's probably the best way to describe it, because I was but I don't know who I am in cybersecurity. I don't know, probably still don't fully know. But I'm yeah, but that's okay. We all have to kind of be visible and invisible as our life changes, and find where we kind of fit in the world, and that is going to be very unique to us as well. I like the thread about not shouting the loudest, because that's the other thing. A lot of the careers these days that we have, it is kind of encouraged that you have some sort of a public brand, or if not public, at least internally you kind of make your work visible. But then obviously there's the flip where you're am I the one who's always going, you know what, I did that, I'm the person who did this, and me. Yeah. How do you find that balance, even with your team, because you obviously have a team as well, how do you find that encouragement in saying that this is how you should celebrate or talk about yourself? What are the good things to do, and what are some things maybe are not good things? Because I'm always struggling with that balance, how do you not go me?
Yeah, I think I was always definitely in the beginning of my career, I always felt that that's the way you had to be, and I don't think that is the case at all. And I suppose when you get older, you get a bit wiser, and I don't know if it's a case, or maybe you just care a bit less what other people think, and when you're a bit younger, you always think you have to try and prove yourself. I don't know, but how do I distill that into my team when I see the coaching that I'm giving them coming back to me without realizing? That makes me very happy. So, for example, if I'm telling them to be maybe a little bit more assertive or show off their work, and then that comes up in a team call without prompting, that for me is that's amazing, because it doesn't have to be that they go and present and show off and say, oh, I've done this wonderful thing, look what I've done, I want a reward. It's not about that. It's about them slowly, incrementally having the confidence to take baby steps to advocate for themselves and advocate for their work, and small wins as well. So that's the most important thing to me when it comes to that. Yeah.
What about like mediums of like communicating as well? Because I know you said email.
Yeah.
And corporate world has always been a lot about like emails and written communication and Slack and all of that. Now we are obviously moving into a world of lots of videos and, you know, like short form content, this and that. Is that changing? Are you encouraging people internally to do that? Or even are you seeing a change in the enterprise landscape at the moment with those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, and not necessarily a good change. That's the thing. I think all of our attention spans are becoming so short, which is, I think, long term going to be an issue. Like, but that's we could probably have a separate podcast about that. But yes, obviously the way we're consuming content is becoming very different. It's at the moment it's like short form videos are very important, and obviously you can see that the rise of the influencer and how powerful that has become. And it's been great because now anyone can be an influencer and share their message to a certain extent. Obviously we're still constrained by the platforms and the powers that be that own them. But I think it's fantastic that people are having a go, and obviously there is a downside to that, but that's what I'm seeing even in B2B communications, and that has maybe surprised me over the years how people are quite happy with maybe that less polished look in content. But I would encourage anyone to have a go. Why not? You don't know what's going to happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I would say just be mindful about it, because anything can be on the internet forever. And you don't want to share everything. And that goes back to your whole point about the invisible, visible sort of parallel. You don't want to share everything about your life and who you are as a person, because you're going to change over the years and your opinions are going to change. And you also want to leave that air of mystery as well. Yeah. Like I said, that helps you sort of build your persona. And also it's about the impact that piece of content is going to make. And I think if you maybe oversell or overshare your message, it's not really going to make that impact.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's about all that, the intent behind it, and making sure that whatever you're sharing, like, it's going to be there, as you said, forever. So you've got to be, like, I know I've said this in one of the previous episodes, like I've always said, like, with great visibility comes great responsibility. You've got to make sure that, you know, and it could be the tiniest of things, you know, like you know that your audience is watching you, and anything that you say or do can sort of influence them at that point in time. So you want to always, you know, be mindful of what you're sharing. Obviously, if you're working for a bigger brand, then you have to uphold their values as well. So there is that fine balance. There's a lot happening in the industry at the moment in terms of, like, you know, how people are communicating, the change, and, you know, how brands are messaging, even cybersecurity. I remember when we first started 7 years ago, like, a lot of what we used to do was really, like, bizarre for people. Like, they're like, no, this is not. And, like, I've seen the winds changing. Is there stuff in the industry that's happening that's been, like, sort of, you're like, yep, I'm really happy with this? Or are they creators, or are they people that you are kind of looking at going, you know, I really love what they're doing? Something that's really catching your attention that you said, oh, I would love to see more of this? Or
I really like podcasts, actually. And I'm not just saying that, but I've noticed in myself, the amount of podcast content I'm consuming, I think, is incredible. And even like episodes that are 2-3 hours long, it doesn't mean you have to listen to it all at once. I listen to a podcast every day.
Oh, nice.
Every day, multiple times. But before bed, I will put on like 15 minutes of something, or I'll have a run and I'll listen to a podcast when I'm running. So I think that is really, really helping if it's done well. And I'd like to see more of that. I definitely like to see more people like yourself taking complicated content and making it simple and accessible through mediums of podcasts, because I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic for my kids as well. They listen to them. I just think it's in a really accessible way of doing it. I mean, we could talk about AI as well.
No, absolutely. Like, I know. I mean, I think I don't mind talking about AI, to be honest. Like, I feel like even in our business and even in general life, like, I'm a big fan of it. Look, I think it's a great, like, co-pilot and something that, you know, gives you assistance. Like, we're a small business, so, like, you know, there's so much efficiencies you get from it. It's like, I feel like I have like a bunch of interns now, which is great. So I don't, like, I'm not an anti-AI person, actually very for it, but it's about how you use it. And as long as you're not letting it do all your jobs for you or making you lose your human creativity, I think it's great. So like, I don't mind talking about AI as long as, you know, like, I'm not forcing someone to do it. So no, I'd love to hear, like, you know, Are there things that you think that people could be leveraging? If there's anything like great that you've seen in that space? Because yeah, I really do love it. And I think it's forced me to think outside my box as well. So as I said, it's like literally having like lots of interns who will like challenge me.
Well, again, I think it's one of these things that I think people are maybe overcomplicating it, especially, and I don't mean, you know, on a sort of agentic AI level. I'm talking content creation wise. Just scale it back a bit. Like people go, oh, prompt engineering, and it sounds like really fancy, and it's actually not. Just keep it simple. You want to tell, if you're like communicating with something like ChatGPT, just keep it simple. You're telling it a role, you want it to do, give it some context, and away you go. And then you iterate, and it's like garbage in, garbage out, and it's that simple. So I think content creators, I would love the industry to start talking about that, to simplify how to use AI in your everyday life, because that's not being spoken about. The other thing with AI is the ethical implications. I don't feel that big businesses are taking that seriously, and we are going way ahead, forging into the future with AI and how it's like impacting and infiltrating our everyday life in every place. And yet we're not having the conversation about where is the ethical and the moral implications here. Are we going to get to a point where everything in our heads is in AI? Is that okay? Are we happy with that? People are using it as a therapist. I mean, I do sometimes, for example.
I have a running joke I always say. It's like, it's a friend I never had.
Exactly. But where is this information? You know, and are people understanding that? Are we educating people on how this could be abused in the future? These are really important things, and we are not speaking about that. And that is a massive concern to me. And especially as I have children, like, what kind of world are they going to be growing up? And when they're my age, how is that going to look? Are they going to be able to see everything that we have spoken about with AI? Is that going to be like, you know, a free-for-all and everything? And there's no guardrails. So why isn't the industry talking about this?
No, that's true. I mean, we kind of speak a little bit about, because we have a podcast called AI Security Podcast, so we are having those but I understand where you're coming from, because it is so tempting and the technology is so great. I think it allows people to do so much. But of course, you know, there is like, what does it mean for humans if we are going? I get tempted sometimes when I want to think of something and I'm like, I'll just ask ChatGPT. I'm like, no, think about it for yourself. Because and obviously, like, you know, I'm much older. I'm not like, you know, a teenager right now, but I've had years of building that muscle of trying to like come up with ideas and stuff. But if I was quite much younger, where if I was going to an AI for everything, am I going to grow up into an adult where I can't come up with ideas? I don't know. I don't know what the answer for that is. But
well, that's more than just a moral thing. That's just like the decline of cognitive like load as well. Like, I think I listened to a podcast called The Huberman Lab, and he was talking about I think it was an MIT study that was like linked basically like the start of dementia with the use of ChatGPT, and it's because it's basically removing our ability to think or need to think. So where is that being spoken about? How are we putting in the guardrails to stop that happening? Where is the medical community here? I'm sure people are having conversations, but they're not loud enough. They're not visible enough.
And it is like, it has really changed the diaspora of the landscape in terms of, you know, how everything's changing, how we're doing everything. As you said, you know, if all that information, like now it's starting to, like, I do see reports and stuff of people trying to talk about how this is impacting everyone. There are some, you know, negative things. I mean, obviously there's a lot of positive, but it's like with every technology, like even with, like, if I think about smartphones, when you were saying forgetting, like, I remember as a kid, I used to remember my home phone number, but as an adult, I actually don't know what my number is right now. Like my UK number, I have no idea.
Not my family. I have no idea.
Like, I don't even know my husband's number. So it's funny because, like, as a kid, I would remember everyone's, like, all the important numbers I would remember, but I've lost that skill. And that's obviously a very, very micro example, whereas now we're using it for so much more. So I completely agree. Like, you know, those are the conversations that we definitely need to have to take another spin on this. Like, if someone was starting in the industry today, like obviously we've got AI coming through and I think it's impacting all roles. What would you say someone coming into tech, or even like someone who wants to be maybe a director of content at a big company, like, what are some of the things, like, you know, what has Jenny learned over all her years? Like, if you were to distill it into like 2 or 3 advice pieces, what would those be?
I think businesses are people, and they're run by people. And never forget that. I think it's easy to get swept up in like the corporate world and think that businesses are these big juggernauts that are like bigger than people, but they're not. They're just groups of people. They have the same issues that you do. They're messy, they're emotional, and having empathy and leading with empathy will serve you well. And you don't have to be in a leadership position to lead with empathy. It could be that word of encouragement that you're giving to your peer, or like being kind to someone if they're having a bad day, being understanding to somebody. I honestly think that goes leaps and bounds, and it will serve you well in all areas of your life. I think be curious as well. It sounds, and people say it a lot, it's cliched, never stop learning, but it's true. You just can't. Everything in life is a time to learn and time to reflect and time to educate yourself on something new. And also don't feel that you can't change your mind. It's okay. It's okay to change your mind. And actually I think it's a level of a sign of like high emotional intelligence if you can take a step back and say, well, actually I was wrong about that. I've changed my opinion because I've influenced myself and I've educated myself, and that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes as well. I think when I started at HashiCorp, one of the first things that I really liked about their culture was that they said to fail well, and that really resonated with me, and I still talk about it now, because if you're going to fail well. Why not? Make a mistake. It's not what everyone does it. I don't know why we have to hide them, because that's the only way we learn, is how we make mistakes. And that's what I encourage my team to do. I'm like, if it's wrong, it's wrong. Yeah. We change, we iterate, we move on. Yeah. That's life.
No, that's so, I think each one of those things that you mentioned, I totally resonate with this. I think even as a leader, and even before when I was an individual contributor, I think those things like being curious, I think that is such an important thing. And I think we often lose that as we grow older. We're not curious about the people around us. We genuinely don't want to learn, because sometimes we get into that mindset that we know everything. And I think that's not a good space to be. Like, I mean, that's one of the main reasons I wanted to do this, because I want to learn from people like you. And hopefully as a community, we learn from each other. We've all had these journeys where they may not have been perfect journeys, as you said. We failed, like I've failed a lot. And I know even with the podcast, I'm going to make mistakes. But for me, it was important to like share that as well, that it's okay to, bring forward your vulnerable self. I think something really powerful that I saw in one of my mentors earlier on, and I kind of tried to emulate that, is sharing your vulnerabilities as a leader is so important, or even as a public person, because, you see these perfect pictures, or you look at this person that you admire and you feel that they're perfect, and that's a very hard thing to live up to. But the minute you start seeing that, actually they fail too and they're vulnerable, it can be so powerful. I remember one of the first times when I shared that with one of my team members, and I could just see that moment. They were like, oh yeah, you're human too. Like, it's fine. And I think that's such a perfect thing that you've said. Like, it's something we forget, that it's okay to fail, and we all fail, and it's okay to showcase that publicly. We don't want to be shown as this perfect thing. So
no one's perfect. Nothing is perfect. And I think that's the massive danger about social media. And I worry about the generation that are growing up behind us, because, I mean, we were probably the last generation that didn't have smartphones and didn't have social media. But like, my children's children, and they're being showed these like cookie cutter perfect people constantly, and they're constantly bombarded with them, and it's horrible. Like their mental health is shot. They're constantly trying to live up to unrealistic expectations, and this isn't just in work. This is like how they look, how they feel, what how they should be acting, what they should be buying, and it's never ending. And I think that we're going to come to a point where it has to stop. There has to be a tipping point. And I think it's our responsibility to start talking about it more and making that more visible, because it's not healthy and it's not right, because we're all flawed people. Everyone is. And if they're saying they're not, they're lying. And that's okay. And actually, that's the beauty about being a human being.
We're all very, very different. That's so true. I'm going to get into someone like, I say fun question. They're not really fun questions. They're deep questions.
Sorry. I did make it a bit like deep and serious.
No, this has been such a great conversation, because I think we've touched on a lot of like really, really important things, which I think my intention with this is like people who are listening to this conversation can just find something that they relate to. They're building careers or wanting to get into tech, or, already are in tech. And, they can kind of listen from people who've been doing this for a while. And just, as you said, celebrate the failures, celebrate the hard moments, talk about things that, we are not talking about, but also about that whole thing about building public brand or building their careers within internally as well. I think all of that is really, really important. So no, thank you for sharing so openly as well. My first question, like the fun, and I'm going to rename this definitely not fun, but like if you were talking to a younger Jenny today, what are some of the things that you would tell her? Like, what advice would you give young Jenny?
Stop caring about what people think. Oh my days. Like, I was so painfully concerned about that when I was younger, and just don't, honestly. You're never going to be liked by everybody. You'd never want to be liked by everybody, and you're never going to please everybody. So just get on with it. Just live your life. Do what you think is best. As long as, you're sticking to your own moral compass, then that's the main thing. And you're not hurting people deliberately. Like, just go out there, and because we only get one very short life. So it has to be purposeful for you. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like that you're saying purposeful for yourself. And just get on with it.
Yeah, just get on with it.
I think that's a t-shirt coming there, right? Something that you're very, very grateful for today.
What am I grateful for? So many things. But my health, because health is wealth. And just every day, I think, is an absolute privilege to be alive. Like, I'm at a certain time of life, like middle age. It's, especially for a woman, it's a very strange time because there are so many expectations and pressures on you, and it gets to like a pressure cooker point, I think, when you're in middle age, because you're still raising your kids, you're at a point of your career, life is very busy, and then you're looking after your aging parents as well. And then society's expectations on you is just wild, but we could have another conversation about that. So I just think every day I'm alive is a privilege, and that's what I'm grateful for, because some people haven't got this far in their life. So
that's so beautiful. Thanks for saying that, Jenny. I think I love that you said health, because that's like one of my biggest pillars as well. And I think you only really realize it when you're much older. Like, like you go, I used to take so much for granted back then. Like, I could sleep through the night and, like be up late, and things would be fine the next day. And I think, like, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because amongst all the conversations that we're having, it's so easy for people to get overwhelmed going, I want to build a career in tech. There's AI coming, there's all of this. But I like the fact that, you kind of towards the end of the conversation mentioning the health part, because that is the number one priority. You've got to look after yourself, your mental, physical well-being. There's a quote that I've recently heard, which I really resonated with. Like, when you have good health, you have 100 problems in your life. And when you don't have good health, that's the only one problem in your life. True. And I was like, every time, like, I feel like, oh, I've got like, 100 balls in the air, I'm always like, you know what? No, that's my, like, if I'm okay, my parents are okay, my family's okay, everyone's healthy. That's like tick. Like, that's such 100%. A beautiful thing too. So as much as we're talking about, doing all these amazing things, I do want everyone to walk away looking after their health.
Because you can't do them unless you're healthy.
Absolutely. So, thank you for touching that. And, I mean, I should mention you've completed your first HYROX recently as well. And I heard you smashed it. And, you've done a bodybuilding championship as well. So amongst all those things, you do these incredible things. So that's going to be another podcast for sure. Like, where you talk about
I just booked another HYROX as well.
You're addicted. It is a cult. So, like, I totally understand. Final question is, what is something that you're looking forward to, apart from your HYROX?
What am I doing apart from my HYROX? I think just living my life, being unapologetically me, because I've spent a lot of time not living that way, and I'm sick of it. So that's what I'm going to be doing. That's what I'm looking forward to. And whether that is spending time with my kids, or spending time with my family, or spending time with my colleagues, or being at work, or being here with you, I just need to be myself. And not have to apologize about it. I don't have to apologize about it. I'm not a bad person. I'm just here, just doing my thing, just like you are and like everyone else is. And let's all just enjoy it.
Yeah, prioritizing your own happiness and recognizing. I think it's so funny because that's kind of like one of my mottos as well. Like as I'm entering like, this new chapter of my life is that I do want to be unapologetically me and prioritize myself. And the beautiful thing that you said, like if you're not hurting someone else, why not be, I mean, I know like the word is not really selfish, but I don't know how else to put it. It's like you kind of be like, you want to look after yourself. And I think we as humans and maybe as, women as well, we're not somehow like, brought up that way, or we don't have that ethos going forward that you got to put yourself first. So I'm really happy that you're doing that, and I think we can be unapologetic together.
Absolutely. Because if you're not doing okay, the people around you are not doing okay. So it's not about being selfish.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So never say that.
Absolutely. Oh my god, I've loved this so much, and this we can continue this forever. But thank you so much for doing this and sharing everything. If people do want to reach out to you because you've got like so much great advice, and you can or join you with your high rocks.
Yes, please do. Always looking for partners.
Yes. Where can they find you, Jenny?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I can send you my profile, and
absolutely
happy to connect with anybody.
Amazing.
Sure.
I'll put your LinkedIn details on the show notes as well. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to The Visible, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to continue to listen to us every week, you can follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. And if you would like to watch us on video, you can find us on YouTube. Join us every week as we continue to uncover more stories on how great ideas come to life. We will see you next week.